Hey there, YouTube. Welcome back. This is the Allegheny Northern in N scale, and today we're going to do the 2024 March layout update. Okay, so as we end winter, I'll call it winter 23, and start moving into spring, we did get some warm weather, and that allowed me to go outside and do some bench work, and that means that the layout expanded in March, and that was pretty much the focus of the layout was the expansion. And before we get into that, let's talk about some new additions to the layout. So March saw the addition of a second Southern GP40-2 locomotive to the fleet. So there are now two of them. Those are from scale trains. And it also saw the addition of one of the arguably best paint schemes of all times, and that is the chassis system. Of course, another SD40-2. But not limiting ourselves to just locomotives, we also picked up two of the 60-foot VTTX flat cars from Jacksonville Terminal. Once again, there is a full review, and you're going to want to watch that before you buy it, because I talk about how the train the cars perform in a train, and you're going to want to see that before you buy it, just in case the radius of your track is not conducive to running these. Also, you're going to want to see a little bit of an adjustment you have to make on those air hoses so that you don't have tracking issues. So check out the review for those. But we do find that variety is the spice of life, so we also added an Atlas GP40 in the CSX Maintenance of Way scheme. That has, all of these locomotives come with ESU sound. That is a Loc-Sound V5 decoder, so they all have sound, lights, the whole 9 yards, and they are very nice models. If you'd like to get a little closer look of any of those models, you can go back and watch the product review of both the SD40-2s from Scale Trains and the GP40 from Atlas. Okay, so to give you a frame of reference, I want to show you where the layout expanded to. I know I talked about it and how I was going to do it, but I want to show you exactly how it worked. Now, before I get back in there and I show you all of the framing and wiring and everything, I understand that I've got it kind of roughed in, but it's not finalized, so it looks a little rough. And a lot of this was made out of recycled parts. So rather than going out and buying new foam, I reused foam, so it looks rough. It's not intended to ever be scenic, though other areas weren't, and they got scenic anyway. So we'll deal with that when we get to it. But here is the inland intermodal yard for frame of reference, and then I'm going to take you across what I'm calling the land bridge here, made up of two sections. This is Cato flex track. Don't mind the foam that's left over from the old track. And then you can still see all the tools are out. But here's the important part. Behind the furnace, I have a nice sized yard, and you can see that trains are already parked in here. I've been running trains in and out of this yard to make sure that it works, and it does. Otherwise, I wouldn't have trains back here. But I built these in sections so that I can move them in the event that I'd ever need to get behind the furnace, do work on the furnace, that sort of thing. And then let me take you along the rest of the way here to show you how the land bridge works. So you don't judge this. This is a mess right now. I just need to clean up. I'm still working back here, but I've got 5 full trains. So the 2 maintenance trains, the tank train, the train that you're used to seeing running around the layout, and there is Rexy. So that is facing here. Plus, I was able to move the road railers out of the yard. I'm going to show you what that does for us here in just a minute. But anyway, so these are trains. So this train actually has a home on the layout, right? So this train is carrying cars that go to various industries on the layout. The road railer is simply an intermodal to intermodal. And then the maintenance away, they don't have a destination, right? So they're just fun trains to run. Same with the tank train. It does not have a destination on the layout. It is just a traffic train, a revenue train that passes by on the layout. It's fun to run, but it doesn't have a home. So this continues on in front of the meters, movable section aligned here with these clips. so that it can stay in place. And then it's locked over here the same way. And then I had to build a small helix. I hate helixes. You know I hate helixes, but this one's not terrible, and it does work. I can get trains up and down it, which is fantastic, because really doesn't help if I can't run trains on it, right? So built a little bit sturdier out of plywood, not out of hardboard. It's got actual 1x2 bracing underneath, which is fine for end scale, not fine for you bigger scale folks. I even have it trimmed back here to let the double stack cars pass, which is fine because what ends up happening is the plywood on the top ends up as like a gusset plate, sort of carries that load. So once again, no scenery intended here, but I may actually extend this straight out to give myself a little bit more yard space, and that might be where those Atlas turnouts that I hate come back into play. I don't know yet, but in any event, you can see that the wiring, eventually this will be tucked behind, it'll run through, but I just wanted to get it set up to make sure that everything worked. So right now that's how it's sitting. But, and I did find an electrical problem, was solved by adding those wires right there. So we're working on some issues, and you can see that I've got, the track kind of raised up there, so it's not done yet. But now what that does is this yard back here is still here, and it has freed up a ton of space for the intermodal traffic. So let me show you how this is going to work, because it is a game changer to how the railroad is going to operate. Before I show you how the railroad is going to operate, this movable section that is in front of the washer and dryer, obviously I need to wash and dry my clothes, otherwise I think folks that I hang out with will probably start complaining. So I needed to make this section completely movable, and so it is. It bolts into the layout here to keep everything aligned. You can see that the track is cut. You can see that I've got this ugly set of wiring running underneath here. I'm going to tuck that up underneath a little bit better. And then once again, I've got a visible clip here. But these simply clip. And then once this is apart, I can move these sections. So they are on wheels. And even this framing is not complete. You can see that I've got the bracing here, but I've got no bracing there. So it's not done yet, right? But it is wired and it does run. And these little pins lock just perfect to keep my track, which is cut, in place, filed down the edges. And I've got a nice transition here. So coming in and out of the yard, not a problem. One thing that I may do is I may actually delete this turnout. I haven't decided yet. If I do, what will happen is this track here will go into the yard, and this track will be a bypass so that traffic can continue through. You can see that I do have the space for that track if I so desire. But what that'll do is that'll give me the ability to pass the yard and not disturb the trains for all of the trains that are just coming from the upper level to the lower level. Right now, I've got to leave a track open for that, and boy, I'd really like to not do that. So I may buy another box of flex track and put in a passing. I haven't decided yet. That's a future expansion for, and it's going to tie into how the layout's going to operate. So let me show you that now. Okay, so with those intermodal cars moved to that back staging yard, the original staging yard, I now have available space to receive trains here at the port intermodal yard. Even though that intermodal yard is not built, none of the track is really tested, some of it needs adjusted. It serves its purpose now that I can get cars in and out and not block all of my turnouts. And plus, I was able to find my locomotives that I haven't seen in months because they've been buried in the back. So they were still there, and I was excited about it. And I've actually been moving cars around in the yard with these two just because I haven't done it in so freaking long. And I know you guys are probably laughing like, well, you need to have them. Yeah, but they were out of sight, out of mind. They were buried in this yard of cars that you couldn't see. So now I've got the ability to actually move cars through here. So what's going to happen is how this is going to work is it's going to be a basically empties and loads in depending on what's going out and what's coming in on the trains. And then once the cars are either loaded or unloaded, my yard crew is going to take these cars back off layout. So they're going to come down through the yard, truck their way down this little bit here, go through the wall, and they're going to go part way down the helix, which is right on the other side of this, and then they're going to shove their train back into the yard there. And then what they're going to do is they're going to grab whatever trains have left them there, and they're going to make that same move in reverse. They're going to slide back down the helix and then push their cars into the yard. I can, if I so desire, separate those locomotives and do a push-pull, one on the other side. Just depends on how long the train is and what I'm trying to do. If I need to turn my locomotives around, let's not forget that this town section acts as a reversing loop, and that will allow me to run the locomotives essentially back through the yard and loop them around and flip them if I need to. So that is an option. Now, I found a problem with that operation, and it was quite by accident. But if you guys recall, probably 2 years ago, I did a video on the AR1, how it works, and whatnot. And if you recall, my entire loop here is not the reversing section. My reversing section actually starts here, and it ends just before the turnout down. It's on the other side of those refrigerated boxcars. So that's my reversing section. In order for the AR1 or any reverser to work, your train needs to be completely within that loop in order for it to function. Because what happens if you've got a set of metal wheels, or you've got a trailing locomotive or something on the back, you're going to have one locomotive in one phase, one in the other phase, and it's going to short out. Same thing happens with metal wheels. If your train is completely made out of plastic wheel sets, this doesn't apply. You can do whatever you want. It won't matter. But I've got a mix on the layout, and that became a problem when trying to turn some of the larger trains around. So if they come up the helix and then through the yard and then try to wind their way around town, does not work very well if they're like, say, that tank train that has all the Atlas metal wheel sets on them. Other problem is these turns were never intended to handle full freights. So they are tight curves. And I can tell you right now, for instance, the big boy, not going to be able to pull into that station. So it was never intended to. One, I never intended to have it on the layout. That's problem number one. But problem number two, this layout up here is set up as its own little switching layout. So it sort of operated independent of the main layout, even though it was connected and would receive traffic on and off. It was never intended for main rail traffic to come through it, so I used tighter turns to fit more stuff in, to give it a more urban feel. And then, of course, I have my little switcher standing way over there. He was pretty much going to be the only guy that was up here. So that's going to add a little bit of operational interest to it, because I'm not going to be able to bring full trains around through here. Well, you may say, well, that sounds like a design flaw. Okay, but it's also realistic because, once again, this is not a main branch. You would not see an intermodal train coming through this town. It's just not built for that. So, I'm okay with the way that's going to function. Okay, so with all of this new stuff, how the coal trains are going to function. One, I have my marshalling yard up here, so that's fine. These are all the cars that are going to come off the layout, onto the layout, whatever they're going to do, go to the mine. They are going to exit the same way they've always come in. So this is going to still function as a branch line. It is still going to function out of that little staging yard back there that is being used right now for intermodal traffic. So what's going to happen is if I've got overflow cars, they can go there, but typically it's going to be a pass-through only. So the cars are going to be at the tipple here. The overflow is going to be in the marshalling yard, but because we all know that I have a problem and can't stop buying coal cars, if I have an overflow, there's two places where those are going to go. One is the intermodal yard back here, which I don't want to really fill up because I need it for the intermodal. The second one is the transfer yard down on the lower level. So how this would work is trains are, empties come up, loads go out, and then they make the loop down to the lower level. Okay, now let's follow around here. So how that will work is those trains will leave their cars back here where the small little interchange yard is. And they're going to contend with any other interchange traffic that may be there. So these hoppers, for instance, that are bound for the cement plant, those would be in the way. So we'd have to kind of coordinate that a little bit, because I can't fit a whole coal train in there and have traffic from the other train in there that's switching the local industries down here. So that means between the power plant, which will have empties in, loads out, this interchange yard, which is going to have both the local traffic that the main, the through freight's going to drop off, and then also have the coal cars, inbound and outbound. That's all got to come out of this yard. Not a lot of space for that. So that's going to add some operating interest. And mind you, these cars are here now because they're actually not destined for the coal. They just didn't have a place to go. So they're not going to the cement plant, the coal plant, the power plant. They're there because I had nowhere else to put them. But now that I do, we're gonna round those up and get them out of here. So real quick here, we've got the intermodal traffic now has this upper yard behind the wall here that it's going to use. We have the other yard, which is the new main yard, which is going to hold basically my fun trains and my trains that I, have either done what they need to do or need to lay over somewhere in the operational scheme. That's going to be in the big yard. And then we've got the interchange yard here for the coal, and then we've got the marshalling yard over there for the coal, plus the actual tipple. And that is where I'm putting all the stuff. Okay, let's talk about all the locomotives, because we also know that I am out of locomotive space. Let's talk about what we're doing with those. Okay, so sooner or later you're going to get to a point in your collecting career where you have way too many trains and not enough place to put them all. And when that happens, I don't actually know what you do, because I keep adding track to mine. But eventually what's going to happen here is we're going to have too many locomotives and not enough train to run them all, just because that's the way it's going to go. And I'm not going to stop collecting locomotives or coal cars, so we're just going to have to figure it out. But while we're doing that, I wanted to, have as many of them on display as I can, realizing that some of my older models that may not be as well detailed should not be on display, and some of my scale trains ones or newer ones that are highly detailed I would want on display. So I'm going to be making some change out of my locomotives. That's going to involve upgrading. So some locomotives that don't have sound, don't have, all the details are going to come off the layout so that they can get sound, they can get detailed, or they're going to get replaced, whichever one comes first, and then the new stuff is going to come on. In the meantime, I've pulled some locomotives aside because I'm in the process of speed matching them, consisting them, and getting them ready to run trains. So I need to make a better division in my trains, because I have Norfolk Southern, which is the lower level, and then I have CSX and the Allegheny Northern, which is the upper level. And right now I only have one Allegheny Northern locomotive. So until I decide that I want to detail and weather and paint another one, I am going to need some leased power to get these bigger trains, because all I've got is this little switcher. So although I love that little switcher, he can only do so much. And so between having the turntable and the engine house there at the roundhouse, I've got this little service back here where I can store some locomotives. But that's not going to be enough, because I've got my little switcher here. I've got my little, I'm going to call him the yard runner. He kind of runs, the trains out of the yard, down the helix to one of the other yards, but he's not really the coal train necessarily. And then I'm setting this CSX up to be this is going to be an intermodal train. So this is going to be an intermodal train that comes from the port and goes to Norfolk Southern's port terminal down here. And then I'm going to set up a Norfolk Southern that does the same thing in reverse. It's going to start down at the lower and go to the upper. So that's to give them shared tracking rights and display that a little bit better. But we're getting a little bit into the operation too far, I think. So that is the beauty and the conundrum that this expansion has provided me, in that I have all of this operating potential now, and I have all of this room to stretch my trains out. And of course, I view that as a need for more locomotives and more cars. And realistically, right now, I probably still have too much stuff on the layout, but we all know I got a problem. We're not going to talk about it. So that is the big work for March. Let's talk about some little work. Okay, so for the little work, I worked on weathering some. These are ancient Concord auto racks, and I got to be honest with you, their detail does not come even close to the Scale Trains auto rack, which are I've got to tell you, they're works of art. They're beautiful. But I wanted to weather these things up and make them look like they've been around for a while, because quite frankly, they have been around for a while. This one right here is, it's got to be going on 15, 20 years that I've had this guy. So he's been around. And in all that, I didn't want to, some of them I wanted to be very, very weathered, and I wanted them to look like they were every mile of track they had seen. Some of them I kept a little bit cleaner, and just because these cars don't necessarily get. It's very rare to see them rusted, because most of them were made out of aluminum. So I wanted to represent some of the where they had done some maintenance and replaced panels, but also wanted to kind of show some age and some grime. So I did that to those, and then this cement car, which I really liked. I liked the way it came out, especially with the look of the spilled concrete on it. And so somebody had asked that I show how I did that. I will do a video on weathering those, because I've got another car that needs it. So I will show you how I did that. And you can copy it and use a similar technique. So that was sort of the modeling aspect of the month. And so I don't know the auto racks. I don't know if I'm keeping them or not. I may end up letting those ones go. You're probably gonna see them in some videos. You're gonna see them getting pushed around and pulled around. But at the end of the day, I don't know that those are going to stay in my fleet. And I did a review on these. I can't remember when, in comparing them to the Scale Trains version. And when you see that detail, it's night and day. So these may end up on the I'll call it the garage sale block, and they may go. Okay, so I know that was a ton of stuff, and it was kind of fast. Not real glitzy necessarily, but the future videos that are going to come out, or with that changed operational scheme, is really going to make a difference. Like it's going to be astronomically different how the railroad operates, and so I'm pretty excited about that, to be honest with you. Once I figure out how exactly I want to handle the the passing siding inside that yard, which is going to be at a later time, but I think it's almost necessary to keep the trains moving, and it gives me a space to put a whole nother full train of either fun stuff that doesn't really have a place on the layout, or to put a real train that's going to do something on the layout. I don't know yet, but I'm looking forward to doing something with that. So it's an opportunity to buy more train stuff. That's what it boils down to. It's an opportunity to buy more train stuff. So a couple of things that you should be on the lookout for. I'm probably going to get some more of those Jacksonville Terminal Company 60-foot flat cars, because now that I figured out that I can make them work on my layout, they're really cool and I like them. So I'm probably going to get up a couple more of those. I know that Atlas has a couple more of the maintenance away locomotives out, and I'm probably going to get those because they're cool and I like them. They're sound, they got sound and everything, and well, why not? So that's probably going to get me into April. I also need to get back in. We put the signaling project on hold, so I think I've got 26 more signals I need, or some crazy thing like that. So this whole expansion that I did is not going to get signaled. It's basically going to, the visible layout's going to get signaled, but the hidden part that people really won't see is not going to get signaled. So I'm not going to worry about that, but I do need to signal the entire upper layout and the lower layout. So finish the lower layout. So that's, I think there's 20 more heads. That might be 20 or 19 signals because some of them are doubles. So figure out what that is. So that's gonna resume in April as well. And then the next video that I do, if everything goes according to plan, is actually going to be the weathering of that coal hopper. So that's what I've got planned next. And then I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's going to come after that, just because now that I can run more trains and I've got that yard to play with, I'm probably going to be doing a lot of that. So I'm thinking April's going to be a lot of operation and not a lot of modeling. And then, of course, April starts all of the spring outdoor activities for, landscaping and all that. So time's going to start becoming a little more scarce down here in the train room. So a lot of stuff planned, a lot of stuff coming up. Probably going to be a lot of money spent. Got to do that before the governments of the world crash the economy. So, gonna spend it all on train stuff, because it's gonna be hard to survive the apocalypse without some train stuff. So that's coming. But anyway, that is where we're at here. That is the March 2024 layout update. And so for those of you who celebrate, have a great, happy Easter. And for those of you who don't, have a great weekend. And looking forward to seeing you guys. We're going to try to keep this one video a week thing going here. So we're I think 14 or 15 weeks into the year, and we're doing good. So I'm going to keep that train running, and we'll see you here next weekend.